You hold a newborn, and your chest goes tight. That fear is older than farming, older than fire pits with stone rings. In hunter-gatherer camps, 8% of babies died before their first birthday. Almost half never reached 15. Every parent in that camp knew those odds and looked down at a face that fit in two hands anyway. And somehow, they kept enough children alive to hand you a species. So how did ancient humans keep their children alive? Not with medicine, not with clean water, not with a single heroic mother who simply loved harder than you do. Picture a forest camp at first light, leaf huts in a ring, smoke 14 adults. A woman gave birth here last night, squatting, gripping a sapling, with 4 other women pressed around her. Watch what happens to that baby in the next hour, and you will see the entire answer, because the baby does not stay with its mother. Within minutes, it is passed to a woman who is not its mother, then to another, then to an older girl. By the end of the day, that newborn has been held by nearly every adult in camp. To us, that looks like neglect. It was the survival system, and we dismantled it about 4 generations ago. Start with the first 3 weeks, because that is where the machine shows its gears. Edward Tronick, Gilda Morelli, and Steve Wynn spent the 1,980 seconds living with the FA in the Eturti forest of Central Africa and published their findings in American Anthropologist in 1987. What they recorded broke the model psychology had been using. FN newborns were not guarded. They were circulated. Women other than the mother put the baby to the breast, including women who were not lactating, who let the infant suck for comfort while the mother rested or ate. Sarah Blaffer, HRD, at UC Davis, pulled the numbers together. By 3 weeks old, an FA infant is in contact with someone who is not its mother 40% of the time. By 18 weeks, other people are providing 60% of that baby's care. The mother has become the most important caregiver among many, not the only one. A newborn in that camp is never once left alone with a single exhausted adult. Now, some of you are thinking, that sounds like a baby being passed around like a parcel. Doesn't an infant need one person? Fair question. And the answer is in what the mother is doing with those freed hours. She is walking out of camp to dig tubers, because if she does not, there is no food. And if there is no food, there is no milk. And if there is no milk, the baby dies in 11 days. Every hour someone else holds that child is an hour of calories. The passing around is the feeding. When the anthropologist Paula Ive asked an EFE woman who takes care of the babies, the woman answered, "We all do." She was not describing a value, she was describing a food supply chain. Now follow the baby into the night. Because the second half of the system is the body clock. Melvin Connor and Carol Worthman published data in Science in 1980 from Kung infants in the Kalahari. Those babies nursed roughly 4 times an hour, in bouts of about 2 minutes, through the day and straight through the night, riding in a sling against the mother's skin. Not 4 feeds a day, 4 an hour. That constant nipple stimulation suppressed the mother's ovulation. And Kung births landed about 4 years apart without anyone deciding anything. Sit with what that spacing does. 1 child at a time gets the milk. 1 child at a time gets carried on a march. No mother in that camp is ever nursing a newborn while dragging a 2-year-old who cannot yet walk 12 kilometers. The birth interval was not a lifestyle choice. It was a filter that decided which children lived. And here is where it becomes a story about the whole species. Not one camp. Hillard Kaplan, Kim Hill, Jane Lancaster, and Magdalena Hurtado laid it out in Evolutionary Anthropology in 2000. A wild chimpanzee mother waits roughly 70 months between surviving births, almost 6 years, because she carries and feeds that infant entirely alone, and nobody hands her a single mouthful. A hunter-gatherer woman, on the same rough calories, in the same kind of forest, does it in about half that. Great ape fertility peaks near 0.2 offspring a year. Forager women run around 0.3. We out-reproduce chimpanzees by 50% while raising children who stay helpless twice as long. And we do it on worse odds and thinner margins. That gap is not intelligence. It is not tools. It is other people's arms. Chimps cannot do it because a chimp mother will not let anyone else hold her newborn for months. Ours were handing theirs around within the hour. Then the father, Barry Hewlett of Washington State University, spent years with the AKA and published Intimate Fathers in 1991. AKA fathers are within arm's reach of their infants 47% of daylight hours. They hold them 22% of the time. In camp, mothers hold babies 51% of the daylight, fathers 22%, and other people the remaining 28%. Hewlett watched AKA men take the baby the moment they walked in from a hunt, exhausted, and kiss its stomach, because holding it was the reward, not the chore. And then the person the whole system quietly rests on, the grandmother. Kristen Hawkes, James O'Connell, and Nicholas Blurton Jones tracked Hadza foragers in Tanzania and published in Current Anthropology in 1997. They weighed children and timed exactly how many hours each woman spent digging. The pattern was clean. A weaned child's weight gain tracked its mother's foraging hours until the mother had a new nursing infant. The moment that happened, the older child's weight gain stopped tracking the mother and started tracking the grandmother's hours in the tuber fields. Read that again. An old woman's arms, swinging a digging stick in the heat, are the reason a 4-year-old does not thin out and die when a sibling arrives. She has no more children of her own to bear. She is not spare. She is load-bearing. Rebecca Sear and Ruth Mace then did the brutal test. In 2008, they reviewed 45 human populations, historical, contemporary, across 4 continents, asking one question: whose presence actually keeps a child alive? Maternal grandmothers improved child survival in 69% of the studies. Fathers showed a benefit in only about a third of them. That number offends people, and it should be read carefully. It does not mean fathers do not matter. It means a child's survival was never resting on 2 adults. It was resting on a web. Pull one thread a father, in most of those societies, and the web holds. Pull the whole web and the child dies. Which brings us to the thing nobody says out loud. The nuclear family is not tradition. It is an experiment, and it is about 4 generations old. For the roughly 300,000 years our species has existed, no human infant was ever raised by 1 or 2 adults working in isolation. A baby had 8, 10, 14 pairs of hands. Morelli's team found EFA toddlers spend less than 40% of their time with their mothers, and the child chooses. It walks toward whoever is warm and responsive, and someone always is. Now count the hands around a baby tonight in a 2-bedroom apartment at 3 a.m. 1. Sometimes 2. Ancient parents lost children constantly. Half of them, to fevers and snake bites and hunger you cannot imagine, but they did not lose them in silence. At 3 a.m. alone, wondering what was wrong with them for finding it this hard. When their arms gave out, a hand came out of the dark and took the baby. Every single time, we solved the fevers. We solved the water. We solved the snakes. And then we quietly removed the 12 people. So here is where you actually live. You put the baby down at 2 a.m. and you check your phone because there is no one awake in the room. In that camp, 3 women were awake because someone always was. You count how many days until you get an hour to yourself. In that camp, the hour came every time a sister-in-law reached out her arms without being asked. You read that Ife mothers only did 40% of the care, and you feel a flash of something that is not judgment, it is envy. I dig this stuff out. One video at a time: how they slept, how they buried children, how they fed a camp through a famine. Subscribe, and you get one every week. You were not built to do this alone. Nothing in 300,000 years prepared your nervous system for 1 adult, 1 room, 1 baby, 1 long night. The exhaustion you feel is not weakness, and it is not a personal failure. It is the correct alarm from a body standing in a gap where 11 other people used to be. They had something you have lost, not toughness, not patience. So drop one name in the comments who actually showed up for you at your lowest. And the next thing those people did to keep a child alive is stranger than anything in this video. It is on the screen right now.